mighty King Gilgamesh built the great city of Uruk. Its walls stood higher and stronger
Hey
than
guys,
any
it's
in
Rick.
Mesopotamia.
I found this cool thing about Gilgamesh.
And at the base of its gates, at the foundation of the city walls, there lies a stone of lapis lazuli. It is here that the story of Gilgamesh is carved.
This is a story very similar to Lot.
Gilgamesh, 1/3 human and 2/3 god, the strongest superhuman that ever existed. It was he who in his glory built the great walls of Uruk to keep his people safe from outside forces, but not from himself.
See, this
he
is
oppresses his people, and so they cry out to the sky god Anu. In response, Anu creates the wild man, Enkidu, to plague Gilgamesh's city. The wild man begins to attack the shepherds, killing their livestock and depriving them of food.
This actually is you becoming this monster.
Complaints are brought before Gilgamesh, and the great king sends Shamhat, a temple harlot, to seduce Enkidu.
That's a female.
In his wisdom, Gilgamesh knows that bodily contact between the two will tame the wild man, and he will lose his savagery.
Do you see? That's what happens when you go under.
Upon their return to Uruk,
takes away the monster.
Shamhat and Enkidu find Gilgamesh attending a wedding. He demands that as king, it is his right to be first to sleep with the bride. Enkidu is outraged and challenges Gilgamesh to a test of strength. Should Gilgamesh be unable to pass Enkidu and enter the temple, then he must give up his right.
It's always the battle.
Late into the day, they fight, until finally, as the moon takes to the sky, Gilgamesh gains the upper hand, forcing Enkidu to concede his superiority. The wise king, however, honors Enkidu's wishes, and they return to his palace as friends.
That's kind of a Jacob story, too. Wrestle all night long.
A few years pass in Uruk, and Gilgamesh and Enkidu grow lazy. So the king proposes a great adventure to the southern cedar forests, to slay the demon Humbaba and cut down his trees. Enkidu protests at first, but eventually gives in.
They're going south. They always venture south.
The deserts are harsh, but the warriors travel on. Each night, Gilgamesh dreams terrible dreams. In the first, he sees Enkidu lying still in
So this
bed.
is like Abraham.
When he awakes, Enkidu tells him that it means they shall be victorious in their coming battle, and return home safely.
This is Abraham and
In
Lot.
the second, he sees a giant man whose flesh is made of stone, his huge fist wrapped around Gilgamesh's waist. Again, Enkidu claims it is a good omen, and that Gilgamesh's legacy will be lifted to the heavens.
It's got a grip on its lower.
Into the glorious cedar forest they stride, and before their strong axes, the trees begin to fall. The ferocious Humbaba, half demon, half ogre, hears the crashing and falls upon the king. Finally, the killing blow is done. From the tallest tree in the forest, Gilgamesh and Enkidu cut a mighty gate for the walls of Uruk. They build rafts from the remaining trees and float down the Euphrates River to their city.
They always use Euphrates as the great river.
Upon their return to Uruk, however, Enkidu falls ill. This time it is the wild man who is plagued by frightening dreams. He finds himself in the House of Dust, surrounded by the shadows of his ancestors. The spirit of Humbaba appears and curses Enkidu. Sitting at his bedside, Gilgamesh listens as his friend describes the netherworld.
The netherworld is
The
the land
house
of the
where the
dead.
dead dwell in total darkness.
This is
Where
you
they
and I when we
drink dirt
die
and eat stone.
in meditation.
Where they wear feathers like birds, where no light ever invades their everlasting
Complete
darkness,
darkness.
where the door and the lock of hell is coated with thick dust. When I entered the House of Dust, on every side the crowns of kings were heaped.
Because that's where you give up your crown.
After 12 long days, Enkidu falls silent.
3. 3 days and 3 nights, or 3 days, 3 days?
Gilgamesh laments the loss of his friend and determines not to share his fate. He learns of an ancient being, the only man to gain immortality, and once again he sets out from Uruk. His first destination is Mount Mashu, which guards the rising and the setting of the sun. Upon his arrival, Gilgamesh encounters 2 gigantic scorpions. They laugh at him and tell him his quest is futile, but still they allow him to pass. Beyond Mount Mashu is the land of night, a dark, jagged tunnel that the sun travels through each night. Gilgamesh travels 11 leagues before the light begins to glimmer behind him. Just as the sun is about to catch up, Gilgamesh emerges from the tunnel into a paradise. From atop a hill overlooking the waters of death, Gilgamesh sees the boat that will carry him to his final destination. But blocking his path are 2 huge stone creatures sleeping on the shore. After a brief fight, the colossi are defeated, their stony bodies scattered across the sand. The king notices an old man bent over a tall walking stick, his figure draped in black. The man introduces himself as Urshanabi, the boatman, and scolds Gilgamesh for killing the giants, who are the only creatures capable of touching the waters of death. 300 trees are demanded of Gilgamesh, and from these trees 1,000 oars, for each one will dissolve upon contact with the water. Gilgamesh sets to work, and by the next morning the oars are complete. Urshanabi pushes the boat out into the waters, and the pair are soon encompassed by mist and shadow.
Mist and shadow.
The voyage is long, and the king asks Urshanabi about the Ancient One. He is told of the time before the Great Flood, and of the gods' secret council, where they resolved to destroy the world in a great storm. He is told of the god Ea, who warned the Ancient One, and told him to gather all living things in a boat. He is told of the storm, and how when the black clouds arrived, even the gods were frightened. As the boatman's story comes to an end, the bottom of the boat hits soft sand. The mist parts to reveal an island, deserted apart from a small cottage. At the door waits the Ancient One.
They made it. They made it to the
In
top.
exchange for eternal life, the Ancient One challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. But as soon as he finishes speaking, Gilgamesh falls to the ground in a deep sleep. The Ancient One goes inside and asks his wife to bake a loaf of bread for each day the king sleeps.
His wife.
Time passes,
Remember,
and when
this is all
Gilgamesh
one
awakes,
person.
he denies sleeping. The Ancient One shows him the loaves of bread laid out before him, each in its own state of decay.
And his wife
Gilgamesh
baked
is
these
distraught.
loaves.
His opportunity for immortality lost, he begs the Ancient One for another chance. He tells the king of a plant, hidden at the bottom of the ocean, that will restore Gilgamesh's youth. Back the king travels, across the waters of death, through paradise into the land of night. He ties stones to his feet and marches down into the depths of the ocean. He emerges hours later with the plant and collapses on the shore. While he sleeps, a snake moves down from the dunes and eats the plant. Its skin is shed and its body revitalized. When Gilgamesh awakes, he sees the snake reborn and knows his hope is lost. The road back to Uruk seems long and harsh beneath the feet of the king. When the great walls rise up in the distance, he stops and falls to his knees. He raises his arms and praises the walls of Uruk, his finest achievement. For it is not man's fate to live forever, but for his creations to carry his name into generations to come. 4,000 years ago, in the cradle of civilization, the mighty King Gilgamesh built the great city of Uruk. Its walls stood higher and stronger than any in Mesopotamia. Its craftsmanship surpassed all others, and at the base of its gates, at the foundation of the city walls, there lies a stone of lapis lazuli. It is here that the story of Gilgamesh is carved.
That's some pretty crazy stuff, huh? Listen, you can listen in on all of that. You know, I'm sorry if it seemed kind of annoying if I came in every now and then to say something. But that's another meditation dream. They're all meditation sequences. Going back into the mists, you know, and going into the darkness and finding this one little house where this maker hangs out, you know, in the doorway. Every one of these stories are about, you know, about this meditation thing that we go across ourselves. You know, we have somebody taking you across the water. You know, there's a place of death. You know, the valley of the dead. The word dead and dying takes on a whole new perspective in these stories, because that's what they consider someone who is not spiritual. They just come right out, you know, and I guess they could just look at you and tell you, oh, he's dead, you know, just dead. What can you do us? What kind of good can you do it? Now, when the Pharisees say that to Jesus, they called him, what did they call him in that thing? It meant to be a separated one. He's a Nazarene. What can we get from him? You know, is what they were saying, because the Nazarene is what they meant is separated. There's a Nazar, alien, a loner, someone by themselves. Certainly, we're not going to get anything from him, you know. But this epic of Gilgamesh, you know, has a good strand of everything. You know, he builds this wall. He's in charge of this wall. He has to fight to get through things, you know. And Lot shows up in here because he's this in-betweener, you know. He's the one that doesn't think anyone needs to live forever, but their words and their times, you know. But this was the death of himself. When it comes down to it, if he knew that if he touched the woman, if he had any relationship at all with her, that it was going to take away the animal in him and this monster inside of him, if he had anything to do with her whatsoever. And of course, you know, whenever he was challenged, the challenge is to see if he could do this. And his challenge was to go over those 6 things. He baked 6 loaves of bread. His wife baked them to keep track of every day that he was there. And of course, he made it all the way through in this idea of the snake. The snake has always been kind of, well, you could say it's got the scary thing about it because it can change. That's what you are. You're able, this whole idea, once you go inside, when you make contact, that all these cedar trees, this old growth in you gets chopped down, and the new growth, which is what they found at the bottom of the ocean there, was this new growth, this fresh, something new. It's the beginning of something new, and the snake ate it. So, you know, all of these things are really parts of you. And you would see that even in this situation, this story, you know, it's not a real person, you know, and it would have been like Hercules. It would have been like any of these guys that have, you know, they're wonderful stories, and people would then build off of them, you know. And there's a city called Hercules, city called Troy, real places, but not that, you know, that they had such a, you know. Key West is built here. You know what our history is on is salvage, and it's kind of a pirating town where everything has always been about some kind of smuggling, you know. So, you know, they play off of this particular thing. But I hope that listening to that story of Gilgamesh would show you that just how rampant this is, and that all of these wonderful stories are in the mind of you catching on maybe once in a while. Whole idea that once you make this contact with this other side, you're different. You change, and you change into something better and prettier. And he's no longer going to be able to be himself after that. So, like me, as tough as it is, I'm trying to get back to doing my work, but it ain't easy, But it is working. It is working though. So I was just listening to this morning, and I said, look, it sounds so pretty. It sounds just like one of these stories that we're talking about, And that idea that there was this thing had a stone thing about its waist. That's a lower conscious thing. We're showing that our true mind is just literally wrapped around the lower parts of our mind, this animal nature of ours. Till we can tame that baby, Anyways, good morning. Best to you guys. Happy Saturday. Love you.